There's a lot about Season 1 of Spongebob that I love. The expressive animation, the effort they took to establish strong characters with strong personalities, the time that was spent on these earlier episodes really show. There was a lot that the show had to prove to audiences, like just how much staying power and charm the settings and the characters have that still influences and inspires artists and netizens decades later. If you're watching this video, you know these characters. SpongeBob is an autistic, starchy, clean-cut square nerd. Patrick is a dumb doofus who means well, that most of the show's humor comes from whenever he's in the scene. Sandy Cheeks at this point, really hilarious and cute name first of all, has been very well established as a core member of its iconic cast. We understand that she's a strong female character and a stunt buddy with SpongeBob. Tea at the Tea-Dome, Ripped Pants, Sandy's Rocket, Nature Pants, Muscle Bob Buff Pants, Karate Choppers, Suds, and Valentine's Day all work to establish her as a squirrel of science, a student of the martial arts, who can kick your butt and also own your butt, as well as someone who is extremely considerate and caring to her friends. She's an amazing role model. But there's one major element to her character that had not been answered up to this point. Just why is this squirrel living underwater? What's her home like? This was before the later canon, so we had scraps to work off of. She's a reverse astronaut, which is a fancy name for a marine biologist, aka a water-type anthropologist, studying the critters of the sea, who occasionally goes to the moon. Wow. To me, she can also embody the perspective of an immigrant living in a culture different from her own. As an audience, we immediately relate to her because we come across land critters more often in our day-to-day, like herself. To see her exist in this underwater show for the first time really drew me to this character all those years ago. My family are immigrants and I was born in Canada, so I naturally found her role in the show to be very compelling and curious. I think by also having her be distinctly American helps North Americans understand how to observe and respect the culture that isn't her culture. This idea is later expressed in the opposite perspective with charmingly hilarious results when the citizens of Bikini Bottom tried to bring a little bit of her home to her. We often take this for granted, but the voices in the show are iconic. Before SpongeBob focused more on being a slapstick gross-out show for a significant chunk of its existence, there were a lot of complex emotions to draw from, like being homesick. Carolyn Lawrence really sells this universal feeling of missing something, and her song is genuinely heartbreaking. There's a pureness to her sorrow, anger, and eventual realization that she was home all along. She also just seems genuinely humble and sweet and just happy to have found work as a voice actor. She mentioned at the time she was new to voice acting and was quite nervous working with other voice actors who were all more accomplished than she was. Steven Hillenburg also provided her with several stacks of notes for her to look through. I'm sure his notes were always detailed and exhaustive, but Sandy in particular shared the same career as he did. She pulled through and gave us a really nuanced, sad, sweet performance in the episode that we will be discussing, Texas. Originally, the voice she logically came up with was hyper and fast. You look at a squirrel and of course that's what you'd come up with. I mean, have you seen those things darting around? The decision to slow things down and to keep her delivery at a human conversation level works. She doesn't talk as fast as SpongeBob or Mr. Krabs, and she doesn't talk as slow as Squidward or Patrick or Gary. She's right in the middle and provides an excellent contrast between SpongeBob and Patrick whenever they're in scenes together. Also, these early scenes were just slower compared to contemporary SpongeBob, where the pacing is significantly faster with more gags and jokes crammed into 11 minutes. She's insecure and quick to deny the way she presents herself. She's a strong person. Squirrel? Squirrelson? You ever had a moment when you did something wrong and one of your best friends called you out? And you denied it? I sure have. That's an awful feeling. And also, admitting to yourself later that you were wrong, you end up growing and being smarter as a person. Despite being the toughest critter in Bikini Bottom, she's not the toughest thing in the world. She's also really polite, appreciative, and kind, and really smart. But sometimes she's not as observant of those around her as she would like to admit when she's in a bad headspace. The setup is so immaculately focused and flows so well. We start with the gang imaginatively exploring the miniature houses they've built. She misses Texas, and that makes her feel really sad. And the boys immediately go into fun care mode to help cheer her up. In this whole sequence, we learn how Spongebob might low-key be the toughest critter in the world, the way he flips over Don the whale. And let me tell you, if you've ever tried to lift a full-size whale under the sea, you'd know that they are quite heavy. Sponge and Pat suggest going jellyfishing, and SpongeBob accidentally delivers this devastating line of dialogue. "Go on, go back to where you belong. Run along, back to your family and friends. I know they miss you as much as you miss them. Hurry, before they forget you and leave you behind. Remember, there's no place like home." That feeling when you said the worst possible thing to a friend and you're not sure what you did. And then Sandy sings her song. It's a really sad song with a lot of fun visuals that, despite being so goofy at times, is able to balance out the feels. The show has been able to play around a lot with musical scenes throughout the series, with the season 1 standout being Ripped Pants. When done well, it's one of the most endearing components to SpongeBob. A vibe they haven't explored enough is the feeling of true sadness. And of course, what better genre of music to do this with than the saddest music genre statistically? Country. With a signature SpongeBob Hawaiian twist. Sometimes I like to be hyperbolic, but in this case, I think this is a perfect song that describes homesickness. The feeling of yearning for a home you miss that feels so much like a memory that it hurts. Everyone in Bikini Bottom cries. Deeply affected by the song, SpongeBob and the town attempt to bring a little bit of Texas to Sandy. Bikini Bottom style, which is so cute. It's like Winnie the Pooh pretending to be a little black rain cloud to get honey even though he looks nothing like one. They get a really sudden and painful goodbye, if you can call it that. Sudden because she thinks it would be even more painful to stick around and say goodbye to everyone. Suitcases in hand, she hops on the bus and leaves forever. Until Patrick insults the one thing she loves the most. Without hesitation, Sandy returns and gives them a warning. Never talk trash about Texas. Of course, SpongeBob, out of desperation to make her stay, has the bright idea to keep taunting her to chase after them. And things go so horribly wrong. By the way, let's just be clear, Patrick definitely deserves this. And so does SpongeBob. Don't do this to your friend. That's so mean. But anyway, once at the Krusty Krab, she's treated to the silly, hilarious, and sweet display of love. Even Squidward is in on this. It's at this moment she finally recognizes that
home isn't about barbecues and pecan pies. Home is where you're surrounded by other critters that care about you.
And that's what I call a perfect episode for Sandy Cheeks. Hey friends, thank you so much for watching this. I'm thinking of working on more SpongeBob themed videos since I love that show so much and it's such a comfort watch for me. I'm also thinking of working on some videos about movies I find interesting and albums that have shaped my life. If you like this video and want to see more of that, you could give me a holler in the comments. You could like, share, subscribe, support me on my Patreon, or buy me a coffee. This really means a lot, and thank you. I'll see you next time. Bye.